Welcome to the move-by-move analysis of round 9 of the FIDE World Chess Championship match between the reigning world champion Ding Liren from China and challenger Tomaraju Gukesh from India. After the first 8 rounds, both the players are tied at 4 points each. And as we enter the last lap of this World Championship match, the last 6 games, the winner will have a distinct advantage, the winner of any of the games, because the player who trails at this stage may not have sufficient time to recover. In this game, Gukesh starts with white pieces. He played d4. You may recall that the only game Gukesh had managed to win in this match so far had started with d4. Black played knight f6, controlling the center. White played c4, which is the most common move, while taking more space on the queen side. Maybe in future, white will put his rook on c1 and will open the c-file. Here, black played e6, which is a very flexible move. And this is one of the most common moves here. Black's idea is that after knight c3, he can either transpose back to the queen's gambit declined with d5, or he may play bishop b4. In either case, black is preventing white from taking absolute control of the center with e4. Note that if he plays e4 right now, black can simply capture the pawn because the knight on c3 is pinned. Okay, so this is black's main idea when he plays e6. He can either go for Nimzo Indian defense, or he can play the queen's gambit declined. But the move white plays is g3. Well, this move is called the Catalan Opening. The idea behind this move is he wants to play the bishop on g2, and combined with white's space advantage on the queen side, the bishop will also put pressure on the queen side. So basically, white signals that he's going to play, he will mainly focus on the queen side with all his pieces. And usually this opening has a reputation of being a very solid opening where white plays either for a win or for a draw. He has very less chance of losing, especially at top level. And black will be absolutely happy to draw the game because usually in matches at the highest level, a draw with black is considered to be quite safe, and the players usually press for win with white pieces. So Gukesh played g3 and black played bishop b4 check. He checked the king, and only after white played bishop d2, the bishop went back to e7. Now, this is a very strange idea. I mean, it seems like a very strange concept that black moves to bishop e7, but he takes 2 moves to move to bishop e7. He first plays check, and then he goes back to e7. So what is black doing here? Okay, let me take time to explain the main ideas in this particular opening. Well, when white plays the Catalan, black usually has lots of replies because Catalan is nowadays one of the main lines. But we can categorize all black's replies into, basically we can put them into 2 bags or 2 categories. One of them is after d5, black may exchange at c4 with his d pawn. He may capture the c pawn at some stage. This is called the open Catalan, where black usually puts pressure in the white center and tries to equalize the game or create counterplay. The second major idea for black is he plays c6. The idea behind playing c6 is he wants to basically restrict white's bishop on g2. And most of the games, I mean defenses where black plays c6 are broadly called closed Catalan. So let's see one of the ideas where black plays the closed Catalan, and then we'll get back to the game and we'll compare what black does in the game compared to the idea which we shall see just now. If black plays bishop e7, bishop g2, and black develops his pieces, white supports the pawn c2. Well, at this stage, white could have, at any stage, black can capture the pawn dc. That will transpose to open Catalan. and black can actually take back the pawn. White takes back the pawn. That opens the diagonal for this bishop, and the game takes a different character altogether. But in closed Catalan, after castles, white plays queen c2 and black plays c6. This is by and large the starting position of closed Catalan. So there is a consensus among the top players of the world that this is slightly better for white because white has more space, and white usually, well, this is a move which white plays, b3, overprotecting c4. The bishop in future goes to b2 square. And how does black activate his c8 bishop? Because this is a problem piece for black. He usually plays b6. And after a move like, say, knight c3, rook d1, black finds very difficult to play c5 at once. Either he can play c5 immediately, or he can improve his position further and then try to get c5. But in either cases, black faces a small problem, positional problem. If he goes for c5 immediately, white will capture the pawn. And in either case, if black recaptures with the e pawn, white will play bishop b2. And in this type of position, white enjoys a small advantage thanks to a potential weakness of this d pawn on d5. White in future, of course, he can double his rooks on the d file or put his rook on c1, and he can exchange his d pawn for c pawn and open the d line for his rook. Apart from that, the bishop on b2 also gets a very good diagonal. Well, this is a very important position if we want to understand why Ding Liren played bishop b4 check and went back to bishop e7. Look at this position. There is another move, knight d5. If he recaptures with the knight, then white can exchange the knights and go for e4 followed by bishop b2. Once again, the bishop on b2 is a very active piece. White enjoys a small advantage here. He's threatening to go d5, and if black takes cd, we have a symmetrical position where white has some pressure on the d and c files. So in both these lines, white enjoys small advantage. The bishop on b2 plays an important role. Another point to note is black may not play c5 directly, but he may improve his position first with rook c8 with the idea of c5. Now here white would usually take the center, and whenever black plays c5, he risks exposing this bishop to attack by this bishop. For example, here white would typically exchange the knights. Black cannot take with the knight because that would allow white to play for discovered attack. He will win a pawn. So black is, well, forced to take back with the bishop, after which white may play, or the best move for white is to go knight g5, threatening checkmate and threatening bishop b7. So this move basically gives this knight or exchanges this knight for this very useful bishop on the queen side. So these are some examples by which I tried to show why the bishop on b2 is so useful and the type of problem which black faces when he plays the closed Catalan. So having understood this, now we will understand why bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop e7 is played. After the next few moves, we reach exactly the same position, the closed Catalan, which we were discussing just now. Queen c2, knight d7. Exactly that position. But since black has lost one move, that extra move which white has got is the move bishop d2. Okay, so why black basically argues that I'm giving you the move bishop d2 for free, but the move bishop d2 will actually hurt you more than it will help you. In what way? We had seen previously that this position with the bishop on b2 was very good for white. But after, well, here, this bishop cannot come to b2 so easily. And the d file is also closed, hindered temporarily. So that is the reason why black loses time to force white's bishop on d2. White played rook d1. This is all standard theory. And black played b6. the same idea which we just saw now. Black wants to activate his bishop. Now, in this position, white played the first slightly surprising move. Well, till now, there have been so many games. I mean, lots and lots of games have occurred from till this position. And white usually plays moves like bishop f4 or b3, supporting the c pawn so that he can play knight c3, or even a4. These are the standard moves with white. But the move bishop c3 chosen by Gukesh is a rare move. Okay, just to mention that bishop f4 is the most common move. And sometimes in some games, black plays knight h5, planning to exchange this active bishop for his knight. And one of the moves which white plays is he goes back all the way to c1. And if black goes back knight f6, hoping for repeating the moves and playing for a draw, then we have exactly the same position which we saw initially without the bishop on d2. So we have transposed back to the game where white can play knight c3 and e4, and white will enjoy a small advantage. Okay, so the move bishop d2, bishop f4 is actually an interesting idea, and that's why it's played so often. But Gukesh played bishop c3. Now, this move is quite rare, and from my database, I could find some games which were played by the Russian grandmaster Igor Lisich. So he has played quite a few games with this move, but otherwise, we don't find so many games with bishop c3. Well, the idea of bishop c3 is that the bishop, well, it's almost like the bishop is fianchettoing on b2. With the exception, the bishop comes in the way of the c file, and the knight cannot develop actively from c3. Well, white did have some idea. He wants to keep control of this b4 square. So let's see how the game developed. Black played bishop b7 and white went knight d2, supporting the pawn. By the way, here, dc4 immediately is not such a great idea because white can go knight e5. And in one of the games which the Russian grandmaster Lisich played, it actually started with this move. After bishop b7, he simply took this pawn, and white enjoys a better pawn center. Later he advanced e4, e5, and he got a very good attack. So dc is not a great move. Bishop b7 is usually played, and white played knight d2. Well, here Ding took some time and he played queen c7. A very normal move connecting the rooks. Well, maybe he thought whether he can go c5 directly or not. And in this position, some games have been played. One of the games where the same Russian player played with white pieces, although it was a blitz game, but I would like to show you the type of tricks which can arise from this position. White took dc and black took back with the bishop. Black took back with the knight. Well, taking back with the bishop is also possible. White usually goes b4 and he puts his queen behind the bishop and takes control over this diagonal. But in this particular game, which I'm going to show you, it's an interesting tactics. Black played knight c5 and white went for knight g5. This is the trick which white has. White wants to checkmate black by playing queen h7, but only after exchanging the defender. He wants to play bishop f6 first, and then he wants to checkmate black. And black played h6, after which white took bishop f6 with a threat of checkmate, and black took this knight instead. There is no checkmate at this point. White's bishop went back, and black developed his rook opposite to the queen. Here, white played a very nice idea. He went knight f1 with the idea, after rook c7, he went knight e3 to put pressure upon this pawn. Black went queen a8. Well, this is the reason why he had played rook c7 in the first place, placing the queen and bishop on this diagonal. And his idea is to maybe double the rooks on the c file. But then white first exchanged on d5, and then he put his queen on f5, threatening to capture this pawn. But anyway, back to the game. Black played queen c7, white played rook c1, and black played rook fd8, and over here white played b4. He started expanding on the queen side. That is the main idea behind Catalan. And black's main challenge is how he can activate his b7 bishop. So there are two ways in this pawn structure. Either he can put his bishop on a6 on this good diagonal, or he can play c5. If he can manage c5, he will equalize the game immediately. So till this point, white enjoys a small advantage. But once black gets c5 without any tactics or without any drawbacks, then we can safely assume that black has equalized. And here, Ding actually took long time, about 18 minutes, and he played c5. He calculated the consequences and he got this move. And it seems that white does not have much in this position. White exchanged the pawns, and I feel that Gukesh did not play the most pressing move in this position, and that was he played queen b2, placing his queen behind the bishop so that he can make use of this diagonal, as well as he put his queen on the b file so that tactically he can use some tricks to move this queen and attack the bishop. Having said that, the move dc looks to me like the most challenging move. Although the game should be theoretically equal, but after knight c5, white has the move. White is basically trying to make use of c file when he plays dc. White can play bishop f6. Black will not be able to take back with the bishop because after cd, the c5 knight will hang. That is why black will take with his g pawn. And although black has a double bishop advantage, or rather he has a very useful dark square bishop which white doesn't have, but he has weakened his pawn structure on the king side. So a possible sequence can be, well, the bishop on e7 stays here to defend the c5 knight. The bishop on d5 is good, but white can exchange the bishop with his bishop on g2. And in this type of position, white may have a very small nagging edge in the endgame. Well, I'm sure if Ding was white, he enjoys playing with very small advantages in endgames, and he might have opted for this sequence. But Gukesh thrives in more attacking chess, so he played queen b2. So he wants to keep pieces on the board, and he looks for some tactics, tricks, and attacks. He played queen b2, and in this position, black went knight b6. A simpler solution could have been to play queen b6, offering to trade the queens. If black is happy with the draw, which he should be, then he could have played queen b6 simply. The point is that if white tries to play bishop a5 ideas with knight b3, then black has the move dc. The c pawn is unprotected, and upon a move like bishop a5, skewering the queen and rook, black can simply go queen b5. After bishop d8, sacrificing an exchange, black will take back his bishop, and now this knight on b3 is pinned. So black can utilize the spin and win another knight. So he will have two minor pieces for a rook, which is good for black. But white has a very nice tactic or trick here. He can play dc, vacating the d4 square for his other knight. Now, if black goes cb3 now, white can play knight d4, attacking the queen. And when the queen moves, he can actually exchange and then win a piece by playing c6. So this is one tactic which, had black played like this, he should have considered. But after dc, thankfully for black, he has an intermediate move, which is bishop f3, followed by taking this knight at some point, and then black will have two minor pieces for a rook, which is good for him. So all these tricks arise after the move queen b6, and since these tricks are good for black, so he could have played queen b6 and gone for a simple queen trade and equal position. Instead, he played knight b6, which is also fine, but that allows white to pin the knight with bishop a5. Well, black has some pressure down the D, C and D lines in these positions. So black has to be slightly careful. He played TC, white played knight c4. In this position, once again, we have an option for black, and I feel black played maybe the second best move. Here, he could have simply played knight c4. It's a forcing move. It is good enough for black to equalize and play for a draw. After this, knight c4, black takes the knight, attacks the queen. If white takes the queen, black will also take this queen. And after, if black takes the rook, white takes the rook, black will also capture the knight. And this position is absolutely winning or advantageous for black. Now, after knight c4, the other option for white is to go rook c4. And if black captures this bishop, white will also capture this bishop. And in this position, white is threatening the bishop on e7. Black can simply cover this rank and the game is equal. Well, there are chances that both sides will play an endgame with opposite color bishop, which will have drawing tendencies. The game is absolutely equal. So, well, knight c4 would have been a draw, but Ding opts for the move bishop f3 before playing knight c4. The point is that after bishop f3, now black will play knight c4. If white takes with the rook, black will take this bishop, and there is no bishop on b7 which white can capture. Instead, white has to capture the rook. Black will capture this bishop, and black has two minor pieces for a rook, which is good in these type of positions. So to get rid of the bishop, he took bishop f3 first, and then his idea is to take on c4. Gukesh also played the intermediate move or in-between move. Before capturing on c3, first he captured b6. So he doesn't have the a5 bishop hanging, or black doesn't have the move knight c4 now. Black took this, white took this bishop, and black has to defend the b6 pawn. He played rook a6. Well, after the flurry of moves, we have a position where both sides have opposite color bishops and a small weakness on c6, which may be exploited by the knight. If knight goes to e5, he can try for knight c6. And although black can move his pieces away from attack after knight e5, but still white may enjoy a very small advantage for some time. I believe white should have continued in this manner. Instead, he played queen b5, attacking the rook. Black played rook a2. One of the reasons why I don't like queen b5 so much is that it liquidates white's pawn on queen side. Without a pawn on queen side, it's very difficult for white to play for a win. White took the b6 pawn. Maybe white was banking on the fact that the c pawn is pinned and white can actually capture the c pawn. He may be a pawn up. But black defends this tactically. So after rook a2, white played knight b6, and it is in this position black played a couple of very nice moves and equalized the game completely. He killed the game, basically. He played queen to a7. He moved his queen out of the pin. The idea is that if white takes the c5 pawn, black will first exchange the rooks, and then he will play rook a5, attacking the queen, and then taking this c pawn. So after a move like queen d3, black can simply take rook c5, and both players have 4 pawns on the king side with an absolute draw. The only point to note is white may play queen d8 check. It's a back rank queen sacrifice where black may get mated on the back rank after rook d8. Now black is checkmated. The only move is knight e8. White will take knight e8. And this is a typical mate which is called back rank checkmate. However, after queen d8 check, if black goes bishop f8, white cannot continue his attack. So once again, it's a draw. So black has to be slightly alert to this type of attack. After queen a7, since dc5 is a draw, I mean, white cannot hold on to this pawn, white first played queen b1. Well, in this is a very tricky position once again. It seems black can eliminate this d pawn by playing cd or rook d4, but none of the moves actually work. If he plays cd, white will play knight c8, attacking the queen as well as this bishop. And the queen is overloaded. It has to defend this bishop. It has to defend the rook. Now, if the queen goes here, white can take this, and then upon this recapture, he can take the rook. Okay, so that is one reason why cd4 is a mistake. If black plays rook d4, then once again after this, white has a very nice sequence, that is rook c8 check, bishop f8, queen b4, and the f8 bishop is gone. Okay, this cannot be supported. So that is why neither of these moves, so rook d4 or cd4, is good in this position. So after queen b8, black played instead rook to b8, and this is another very nice move. Pinning the knight, forcing this move to support the knight, and it seems white is doing very good. He's a pawn up on the queen side, but black has seen further. He simply goes back rook a6, and there is no way this knight cannot move because it's pinned, and black is threatening bishop c5. Upon recapture, he will simply take this knight. That is how black is going to finish this game. He will take this pawn. White played queen b5, black took bishop c5. There is no way how white could have prevented bishop c5. So after queen b5, bishop c5, queen c5, black took this knight with his queen, and the game was absolutely drawn. With 4 pawns, no weakness, nobody could make any progress. Here, for the last time, there was a trap. If black plays rook b6, look at the position carefully. Unbelievably, white can play rook a1, and the queen doesn't have a single square to go. b7 controlled by the bishop, c7 with the queen, d7 with this rook, and e7 with the queen. And if he goes rook a7 covering the attack, then white can capture the queen and win a rook. So this is once again a winning idea for white. That is why black had to be careful. Even here, he played queen b6, and now both players knew there is no way they could win. So they played the remaining moves. Queen b6, rook a b6, white played rook c6. They kept on exchanging pieces, and they played the game for the sake of formality, but the result was already written in their minds. The game is going to be a draw. So I'll also play the rest of the moves for you. Black played g5, king g2, rook b2. Usually, when we have pawns on same side, it's very easy for the defender to defend. But now there is no weakness also. So there is no defender at this point. So black simply kept on advancing the pawns. And, well, white played bishop b5. Black attacked the rook. Bishop went to d3. He repositioned his knight, knight d7. Well, he was probably aiming for knight e5. White played f4. This pawns got exchanged. Rook c3, king f2. And we now have a rook endgames, which is even more drawish. Rook c2, king. Well, there is no advantage for any side. Although white's pawns are more scattered than black's, there is no way how black can win any of the pawns. So the players kept on improving their positions and exchanging pawns. And finally, we have this position where black has an extra h pawn, which doesn't make any difference to the outcome of the game. The king can never come up, and this pawn can never be promoted. Well, the players shuffle their pieces for some time, and this is a theoretical draw. Both the players agreed to draw. Okay, so after the end of ninth round, both players have 4.5 points each. We have a rest day tomorrow, and I'm sure both the players will do their homework and work out the strategy of what they'll do in the last 5 games. If the match remains tied after 14 games, we will have a tiebreaker, which means both the players will play at a shorter time control, and that will be very tense. The players with better nerves is likely to prevail. So that's all for today. I shall meet you again after 1 day rest with the highlights or the move-by-move analysis of round 10 of this match. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.